It should not matter if you are an atheist or a devout Christian or if you are a Muslim. It should not matter which side of anything that you're on. If you are an American and you live in this country and you wish to still have the freedoms that we have right now, you should be incensed about all of this. And no matter what side of the issue you're on, you should be incensed about the Constitution itself.
And Lori's right. That's what makes Wayne's case more significant than I think people realize. People think, oh, it's this kook out here with machine guns.
That's right.
Well, there's a lot more to it. Hi, I'm Mike Masterson.
And I'm Laurie Masterson.
And this is Need to Know. We want to welcome you this afternoon. We have two guests, and we're going to talk about Hollis Wayne Fincher, the 60-year-old militia leader from Fayetteville, who's facing trial on January 8th on weapons charges. We have two guests with us this afternoon, Johnny Tittle and Don Bright from KOFC Radio, Talk Radio. And we're going to talk about Hollis Wayne Fincher and the situation he finds himself in after admitting for years to having homemade machine guns and a sawed-off shotgun, and how this all meshes with and doesn't mesh with the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which supposedly grants every individual citizen the right to bear arms. Don, welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
Johnny, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Lori and I are glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Let's just throw this out for discussion. This is a sad situation, isn't it?
Father, do you want to start first?
Well, of course, I've known Wayne for close to 20 years now, and it would be hard to find a more peace-loving, gentle individual, even though he is probably 6'4" and about 325 pounds. He's a big man. I guess his appearance is intimidating to some people, but he has been a man that over the years has studied both the Constitution of the United States as well as the Constitution of the State of Arkansas. And due to his convictions about the Constitution, as well as his fear that we were losing some of the rights that our founding fathers laid out for us, he began investigating and got the militia formed about 1995. Now, I've been to many of their meetings. I've never been a member of the militia, but I've been to a number of their meetings. I've been to some of their cookouts. They make pretty good chili. And I have seen some of these guns that are in question. In fact, I've seen some of these guns fired.
How many members are we talking about?
I don't think there's more than about 15 members, are there now?
Roughly.
So 15 people.
I think
Yes.
14 warrants were
Okay.
served.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The goal of the militia from the very beginning was not to take up arms and hurt anybody, was not to be an intimidating factor, but to uphold our Constitution. That's been their goal from the very beginning. It's been stated in their earliest papers, and down the line, that's where they have stood. They've been accused of a lot of things that they've never said. They've been marginalized by the media. They've been marginalized by people in the community. But I know some of these people very well, and there's other folks that have come to their meetings that are pillars of the community, that are not in any way these wild-eyed people that are pictured.
The very entity of a militia is in itself encouraged and protected by the Constitution. Is that right?
Actually, the way Wayne set it up, and if you'll read his Silver Bullet, which is a brilliant document, but it's rather lengthy, but the way he set it up, he proved that he is an officer of the state of Arkansas as a member of the militia and can, by our Constitution, therefore carry any kind of weapon that he needs, that he thinks the common defense of the state would need.
And that is protected by both the Arkansas State Constitution and the Constitution of the United States.
Yes. There's a debatable point to some people, not to me, but where the U.S. Constitution says in order to keep a well-regulated militia, a lot of people do not know that militia and citizen in those days were
Synonymous.
Synonymous, yeah. They were used interchangeably. So a militia really is the citizenry. That's what most people consider it to be. A lot of people, and Mike, you brought this up a while ago, a lot of people want to say the Second Amendment grants a right to government entities, government militia, and this sort of thing. I ask this question. You've got 10 amendments in our Bill of Rights, all of which define the limits of the government. Now, why in the midst of that, as number 2, would they put one in that strengthens the power of the government? It just doesn't, that argument doesn't make sense.
Well, the exact wording, do you have the exact wording with you?
Let me read you the
Yes,
Second
please.
Amendment. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Now, that's infringed. The word infringed is even stronger than prohibited.
Right.
Isn't it? I mean, you
can't even
infringe it.
Yeah, you can't even go in this far with it. You
That's
know.
right.
It doesn't state what level of arms are to be used. It doesn't state what brand of arms. It doesn't state any classification. It just says arms. And it does not say that only those authorized by government officials may have them. It says the people.
Because we are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. I mean, that's still part of our Constitution of the United States, and still part of our
Constitution. That was actually stated by
Constitution.
Abraham Lincoln, is who made that statement.
Well, but that
is the idea.
the idea. That's the way it was when I was born. I don't know that we can still say that.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, isn't that part
Yes.
of it?
That's the preamble to
We,
the Constitution.
the people,
Right.
in order to form a more perfect union.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it all revolves around individual rights, doesn't
Exactly.
it? Not
Exactly
rights of the
right.
government.
Former Attorney General of the United States confirmed this very thing in dealing with the Second Amendment in saying that this was a personal individual issue, not a corporate.
Yeah. That the power of the protection of the Second Amendment protects individuals, not corporate or government entities.
Exactly.
Just like the First Amendment, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Free speech for the individual.
And I ask that question. I have a lot of liberal friends, and we debate some of this stuff quite often. And they say, well, you know, at the time it was written, they didn't think about having machine guns and cannons and all that. My answer is, when it was written, they didn't know we were going to have electronic media. We didn't have anything but wooden presses. And that's when they say, if you want to take that route, freedom of the press means only a press. You can't use television,
That's
or
right.
the government can control what you say on radio and television. And what they're doing with the Second Amendment, comparing that again to the First, is if we have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and we all know that. We don't, thank God that hasn't ever been really infringed. You know, Mike, it's like we were talking earlier, when you think about what the people have an idea now that the Second Amendment can be kind of partialized, if I can use that word.
Qualified. man.
Yeah, in other words, you got freedom to bear arms, but only some.
A single shot.
Yeah,
or
a
bow
single
and arrow,
shot,
yeah.
or it depends on how many times you have to pull the trigger. And they seem to think that's all right because they don't like the Second Amendment. And I say you can't pick and choose. If the Second Amendment goes down, there goes the First. And I tell my liberal friends, or ask them this question: if the government came in, like they're doing on the Second Amendment, and said, yes, you have freedom of the press and freedom of speech, but there are some words we don't want you to use. If we catch you using those words, we will barge into your door with a battering ram, put you on the floor, handcuff you, take your computer, and put you in jail. I don't think people would stand for that.
You don't?
Somehow I get the impression they wouldn't.
today's
However,
world?
I'm getting out of touch. I'm an old man.
The problem with this is this law that they are using that they've used to arrest Wayne Hollis, according to the papers, stems from a 1934 a law that was passed as a result of gang wars, and as we were talking earlier, specific to certain areas, primarily New York City and Chicago. That's where the big gang activities were taking place. And the police were getting out-muscled by the firepower that the gangs had. I think the gangs had more money to buy better guns.
This was the Al Capone era, wasn't it?
Yes.
Dillinger and yeah.
Right. And they outlawed certain weapons. The interesting caveat here, to add on to what Don just said, is that they made this a law. You cannot have automatic weapons, fully automatic weapons, and sawed-off shotguns unless you want to pay a tax and fill out certain papers. So Don, back to your example, you can say those words if you pay. You can do something illegal if you pay the fee and fill out some forms. Now, what kind of law is that? Where here we have something that is assumed to be illegal. You talk to most citizens of this country, they will say it's illegal to have a machine gun. And yet, if I get permission, I can break this law by getting permission of the ATF.
Not only that, Johnny, but you were telling me that these machine guns, you could buy them in the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Well, sure.
Yes, back
before then.
Yes.
I mean, this was not so outrageous. This was commonplace.
The Thompson submachine gun, its primary sale place before World War I was out of Montgomery Ward and the Sears catalog. After World War I, the Thompson Company almost went out of business due to the fact they weren't selling enough of them. And they put them in catalogs. They were selling them. They had all kinds of mail order sales, and because ranchers were using them to kill coyotes. And I imagine you could tear some coyotes up with Thompson.
Yeah, they weren't for eating, I don't think.
No.
You know, one thing we need to say, I think, at this time too, Mike, if I may, is that our Constitution states that any law that is repugnant to the Constitution, in other words, any law that breaks the rules, is not a valid law, and you do not have to follow it.
That brings us to another point that I'd like to just kind of touch on. I received an email, some correspondence from someone who was talking about the Christian's role in this, and that Christian people should be leery of supporting someone who is a lawbreaker, because this man did not have these weapons registered, which is the law. And what you just brought up was these laws actually circumvent our Constitution, so they're not really valid laws. So when we were talking earlier, Mike and I were talking about law, how far do we let this go? Which laws, as Christian people, are we bound because, we're followers and we're moral people, and which laws do? So there's been a lot of talk, too, about homeschooling. Okay, and if they decide to make homeschooling illegal, or that you have to have certain accreditations to homeschool, then are Christian people bound to do that, to put their children in public schools?
No.
And I say no. If there's a difference between a law that's a speeding law that's there to protect and doesn't infringe on any moral boundaries, than there is a law that infringes on our Constitution or our religious rights.
Well, Lori, in my study of the Scripture tells me that we have to follow our conscience. We have to follow our conscience and our understanding of how the Lord is leading us. Now, we may, in the course of following our conscience, we may do as Wayne has done, and we may run up against this conflict of two different sets of laws. For example, if I run up, you mentioned the homeschooling, if I run up against a law with our government that is repugnant to the Bible, I'm going to follow the Bible. I may end up facing the consequences of it.
Right.
I mean, there's been millions of Christians down through the ages that have lost their lives for the very, very same thing. Wayne has run up against a law that is repugnant to our Constitution, both U.S. and Arkansas Constitution, and he has said, I will face the consequences of following the higher law. And so that's really what it comes down to. And every person, whenever they deal with a law, they have to make that determination.
So in that context, Wayne doesn't see himself as a lawbreaker.
No.
And a lot of other people really don't see him as a lawbreaker.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Because he's following the ultimate law, which in this case would be the Second Amendment, which should supersede anything that was done in 1934 because of a handful of 200 gangsters in Chicago. That should not dictate to the rest of the nation, should it?
No.
That we can no longer have these arms because these guys are going crazy with
There
them.
is a way of changing these things. We have a method. If the government back in 1934 had properly desired to change the Second Amendment, there is a method for doing that. We call it amending the Constitution. You can amend an amendment. And the Second Amendment is no different from the 14th Amendment or the 16th Amendment. It can be amended. And it could have been, but they didn't go through that process. It was done basically just by declaration. That's illegal.
Wayne is doing, this should have been debated, as John said, 70 or 70 years ago, whenever that was, the constitutionality of this law. We just let it go by. Wayne and a lot of other people in this country have considered that a bad law, a non-existent law for a long time. And the more we see our Constitution being eaten up like this, by us not speaking up, Wayne is doing that for us. Now, I'm not trying to make a martyr out of him, but he almost is. He is wanting to bring this thing to a head. Do we have a Constitution in this country? Is this still the United States of America, or can we just throw the Constitution out?
That's right.
And he's standing there saying, put me in jail for this unlawful law if you dare.
Do you think is some of that behind this? Do you think Wayne kind of sees himself as
Well,
a martyr?
Yes. Wayne has, people don't know that a lot of people, Wayne invited the sheriffs out to his meetings. There's been 3 of them, I think, that have come at different times. They had their machine guns laying there on a table. And quite obvious to the sheriffs and other officials. And the sum of their response was, okay, you got them, just don't make a big deal out of them, don't go around shooting people with them,
But he also wrote letters, didn't he?
He wrote,
years ago.
Yes, he wrote this silver bullet we're talking about, the document that I mentioned earlier. He sent that to the president, to the FBI, to the Justice Department, to the governor, lieutenant governor, and secretary of state, and everyone in Arkansas that has any power. And they sent that return request mail. And they wrote in the cover letter, that this document proves, beyond a doubt in our mind, that I have the legal rights as a member of an Arkansas militia to carry any kind of gun I want. If you disagree, write back and tell me where we're not in agreement. If you don't write me back, I'll assume that you agree with me. He got the receipts back. They all got the letters, but he didn't have one response to
Not
that.
one response.
And that was in 2002?
2001, my understanding.
I think
2001
so.
into 2002.
But it's been 5 years ago.
Yes.
But he disclosed all the existence of these weapons to all the authorities that
Right.
matter. And they could have come in then, right, and
Exactly.
said, okay, you shouldn't have these.
Now,
But they
if-
didn't. They waited all these years.
If you were a prosecutor for the government and you have seen this document, which proves that his constitutional rights are that he can have this gun, wouldn't you try to make a request to the judge that you don't want the Constitution brought into the courtroom? You don't want to base this on. That's exactly what the prosecutor did for the government.
So now say that again in kind of in plainer English. I understand what you're saying, I think, but
Well, this document, the prosecution in Wayne's case, they
Yes.
have seen this document.
that Wayne wrote the silver
And
book.
I'm sure if they've got a brain in their head, they can see that he made a completely valid
circle.
case for him having that gun and for the illegality of that law. And no court, I don't think, if they read that, would convict Wayne. Isn't it ironic in terms of that being a constitutional defense that the prosecutor for the government does not want to allow the Constitution to be argued during Wayne's trial?
They just want what argument?
They want this whole thing based on that law that we're calling illegitimate. They don't want to talk about jury nullification. They don't want to talk about the Constitution. They have asked the judge to tell the jury, to instruct the jury to not think in terms of the Constitution.
So, in other words, in a court of law
Court
that is based on the Constitution, all of our laws in the United States come from the Constitution. Every one of them is based on something from
Supposedly,
the
yes.
Constitution. Okay. We are being asked to not put that into effect in a court of law on a case that is directly related to a Second Amendment issue.
That's exactly right. Because they're afraid of it.
And so what they don't want to happen is they don't want anyone that doesn't know anything about the Second Amendment to learn anything about the Second Amendment, because then it would cause, maybe, I don't know, people to know what the Second Amendment says.
You get a gold star for that.
Their statement,
Sure.
here is their motion. It says the United States believes, on the representation made by counsel for the defendant, that the counsel for the defendant seeks to argue matters of law to the jury as a defense. Specifically, it is believed that counsel for the defendant wishes to argue that the charges of possession of a machine gun, and they give the section here, not registered in National Firearms Transfer Record, are unconstitutional charges, and are that the United States must prove additional elements of specific use of said firearms and interstate nexus for the firearms freedom. The United States objects to these arguments, or any argument of this nature being made to the jury by counsel of the defendant, as the court's role to decide the matters of law and instruct the jury of the same, and the jury's role to determine and apply the facts of the law as instructed. So they don't believe the defense attorney has the ability, and certainly this jury doesn't have the qualification to look at the Constitution and
See, we
making
can allow,
determinations.
excuse me, Johnny, I stepped out. I'm sorry.
That's all
Go
right.
ahead.
One other thing. Lori, if I file a lawsuit against you,
Oh, please don't.
I'm not, but if I file a lawsuit against you and you don't show up and contest that lawsuit, you are assumed guilty by the court.
That's right.
If the militia, through an agency of Wayne, filed these papers with the BATF, FBI, Justice Department, Governor's Office, local sheriff's office, county judge, and they did and said nothing in opposition to them, those papers can be assumed to be agreed upon by these various agencies.
By default, that's right.
It's going to be very, very difficult for them to prove that he's done anything that they didn't already agree to.
Well, that's exactly why they don't want that brought
Exactly.
in.
Exactly.
And so they're tying his hands. I mean, what defense would the defense counsel use? Wayne's a nice guy. He has a garden. He's been here for. I mean, there's no.
Under these, if the judge rules that way, he would have two arguments to defend himself. I did it and I was stupid, or I didn't know that it was against the law. Well, he wouldn't say either one of those. Now, the problem, we've got to go back beyond this pleading of the prosecution a step or two. Here is a government official requesting of a government judge that judge restrict what he will allow the people to hear.
The people.
That would infringe upon the First Amendment.
But my point in this is that we are now at the point where a judge, all by himself, can sit there and say, I will not allow that, I will not allow that, I don't want you to think about this, I don't want the Constitution mentioned in my courtroom.
That very thing happened in the Colorado case just recently. A judge told a defense attorney, you bring the Constitution up again, I will hold you in contempt.
Now the judges, they frighten people into thinking, if I tell you, here's what the law is, and you act accordingly. You don't try to think about the law yourself, you only interpret it as I say you can. And people think, well, gosh, I'll go to jail if I don't. Well, legally you can't. And that's when I mentioned jury nullification. This is a process that is ingrained in our Constitution and common law, that as the Sixth Amendment says, you have a right to to a trial by a jury. I see nowhere in there where it says you have a right to a trial by a judge.
That's right.
So the judge has no right to tell you what to think when you're on that jury. And you have every right in the world to say, ignore what the judge says and convict on your own conscience or acquit on your own conscience. And a lot of people don't know that. And there are judges that think that if you do that, you're bucking their iron rule, and they'll threaten to put you in jail. If I were on a jury today, I would use that, and I would hope that a judge would try to put me in jail. Yeah, kind of hope.
How strong would you hope? How bad do you really want to go to jail?
Well, people don't realize how much power you have.
That's right.
And getting back to it earlier, I'm sorry, Johnny, but we talk about what we can do about this and how do we enforce our Constitution. This is the best way possible.
Right.
The people, by not going along with bad laws and bad judge instructions, can, on their own, one person in a jury, acquit because it's a bad law or because the judge wouldn't let them see all the evidence. If enough people did that, that law would have to be changed.
That's right.
Well, that's going to be the point. I mean, we've talked about this, and Johnny, we've talked about this till we're all blue in the face, is that until enough people actually know what the Constitution says, and enough people are actually willing to stand up for what this country was founded on and developed by and for we will continue to be on this, what people like to call the slippery slope
Exactly
of losing our constitutionality and our personal rights. And we will have no one, this is not the government's fault.
You're right.
In my opinion, this is the people's fault. And the people, if there were more people like Hollis Wayne Fincher, and there were more people that were willing to put their money, per se, where their mouth is, then we wouldn't be in this position.
That's right.
And so...
Not only that, hon, but to go sit in a jail.
That's right.
For
a month.
Months, no more. Now it's been 2 months, hasn't it?
That's right.
Now, let's talk for a minute about that, because that's interesting. Are you all familiar with the fact that, I guess, the U.S. Attorney's Office, no, it wasn't the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was the judge, the magistrate, set the bond at $250,000,
Yes.
plus wanted Wayne to sign over the deed to his 120-acre, four-generation homestead
As collateral.
as collateral,
Yeah, not part of the
and
bond.
go live with his, his daughter, and
Wear electronic surveillance, give up any weapons he might have, no association with any militia members, and he could not attend any of the militia musters.
what's going on there, John?
I did some investigating about this issue. What I wanted to find out is was this particular demand of $250,000 bond, was that unusual? Well, I looked at probably 50 different cases of weapons charges all over the country. It seems like $250,000 is the set amount that federal magistrates, and I found something out about federal magistrates too. I went through a whole 18 months of being a juror on a federal grand jury and didn't know that a magistrate is, they sit at the very bottom rung of what judges are. They're just barely a judge according to the definition. They end up taking everything in, and they have to look over the stuff and make those various preliminary decrees. And they also are the ones that sign off when the grand jury send back a writ of indictment. But it turns out that $250,000 is normal. That's the normal amount that is charged in bond. But these other stipulations are very unusual, very unusual. With $250,000 bond, generally a bondsman will take anywhere from 5 to 10% collateral, and they'll write a bond. So he could have gone between probably $12,000 and $25,000 of collateral. Just simply had that much collateral, and the bondsman would have written up a $250,000 bond. He could have walked home or gone home that night, but they didn't do it that way. In demanding that he turn over the deed to his property, and that he move in with his daughter, and the electronic surveillance, and then also limiting his association with people who actually are witnesses to what went on, is far beyond the reach. In addition to that, two other people that were involved in the indictments, two other people also had automatic weapons. They're back home. They came and got the weapons, and they're back home.
Wayne was the only one charged.
Wayne was the only one charged. There may be other indictments coming out. We don't know this for sure. But at that time, he's the only one that has lost his freedom, and only one. And of course, he was the only one that had any substantial holdings as a result.
And a lot of people aren't aware of the new rules in warrants, the no-knock rule. And that means if you're afraid, almost any policeman can make this decision. If you're afraid of what might be on the other side of the door and you've got to serve a warrant, you don't have to go up and knock or holler at them through a window and slip it in or anything like that. You go get a battering ram, and you don't even tell them you're there yet. And you burst through their door, and knock it down, scream at them to lay on the floor, put them in handcuffs, put a machine gun at their head, and then search the house, and after all that's done, say, oh, by the way, here's the warrant.
Isn't there an amendment against that?
No.
Isn't there an illegal search and seizure?
The fourth amendment.
Unreasonable search and seizure.
Yeah.
That actually, I don't know how. Wayne was out next to the creek at his place when they found him.
Yeah, but the door was open.
Yeah, the other gentleman that I'm speaking of, that he came home to his house his apartment being rousted, and he was about to get out of his vehicle, and there was an automatic weapon literally put to his head, and he was held.
And they said, "Get out of that car, get on the ground. You're under arrest." And he had his seatbelt on. And he was saying, okay. And he reached down to do the seatbelt. Get your hands up in the air. get out of that car.
That's one of those things we were talking about where you get shot for no reason.
Get killed for no reason.
Shut up and talk to me now.
Yeah, but once he got out, they put him in a Fayetteville police car, handcuffed him, and they did knock his door down with one of those battering, kind of like those big things you put fence posts in. I'm sure you've used it. Only this is much bigger. They broke it down, tore it off, my understanding.
Of course, he lived in an apartment, so his landlord had to pay for it.
Well, his landlord
that's not funny.
He lost his apartment because of that, too.
He did.
And when they came back down, they said, okay, they had left his window down. He said, you're not under arrest. We're going to let you go. We're going to take your guns, but we're not going to arrest you. We're after Wayne Fincher.
That's the statement. We're after.
We're
Wayne.
after, or we're looking for, or you know.
Why is that? Why do you all think they're after Wayne?
Well,
I've heard that quite a bit.
Wayne is by far the most constitutional-minded individual. He is a brilliant individual. Wayne comes on as an old country boy, but Wayne is brilliant, and he is the should I say the brains behind the operation. He's the one that he wrote this silver bullet document with help from a lot of different people. But he wrote this silver bullet document that Don's talking about. People can find that if they want to look at the website. They can find it on the WashingtonCountyMilitia.com or .com website. Also, all these areas of indictment, they're also listed on there. They've got another man that is running the website at this point that is keeping it all up, and he has been sending me information about the various additions to it. They can find those things and read them for themselves. And I'm not here to persuade anybody.
Sure.
Just read the information, read the Constitution, and it comes out pretty clear.
Let me throw something out that before all of this happened, Wayne, with a lot of other people, we've gone down, we have fought all kinds of zoning laws and other unconstitutional moves to steal people's property. Wayne was very vocal. I was very vocal. But Wayne, as John said, is a very intimidating man physically, but also he is intellectually superior to any person on that quorum court at all. And they're afraid of him. When he would get up to speak, with permission, they would make a sheriff's deputy go over and stand by him. They did that to nobody else. Mm-hmm. And he never threatened them in any physical way.
Never threatened anybody.
Has he ever been in trouble that you know of?
Never broken the law.
He has no police record at all.
He has no police record. He's a big man. He's brilliant. He does the militia thing out on his own property in a concrete building with 12 or 15 of his buddies. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he has a machine gun with the tacit approval of the government.
That's right.
And because they knew him. They've known about it for years.
5 years.
He was in the newspaper last year holding one of his machine guns, which may have been
they say that
the impetus that did it.
That the feds got in there and said, that's too in your face. We can't put up with that.
Was there much of that in your face thing, do you think? The affidavit that I've read online, which I guess it's online, right?
Yeah.
The affidavit of arrest.
It's on that website.
Seemed to be that, you had a confidential informant. I'm still not sure why they needed one since he admitted he had the machine guns. But in there, and then there seemed to be some occasional discussion about the government, and if they try to take us over, it'll take 500 agents to surround this place, and so you can take that and you can put a spin on it and make it look like these are weird people who are, but then you ask, have they ever done anything to anyone? Have they ever overtly tried to do anything other than just talk about defending themselves?
They've done nothing but help people. Remember whenever the boys were coming back from Desert Storm and the ones coming back from Iraq, they've been the ones greeting them. They have been the ones that have led the celebration of our troops. They're very patriotic.
Yeah.
They have set up and helped underprivileged people in different things. They come to various picnics that I've had, and they're a very intelligent, engaging group to speak with.
Now, are there a couple of them? I mean, in every group, there's always a couple of that are sort of far out, fringy.
Let me throw you something that the undercover agent that they sent to the meetings, I guess been going there for months, they knew who he was. But here's what, I'm getting this from a member that was there. He would make statements, and all the time knowing this was being secretly filmed and taped, he would make statements like, boy, if one of those judges need is to be somebody wake them up with a machine gun pointed in there. Now, he made the statement.
Not Don. I mean,
Not Wayne. Not in
Wayne.
fact, Wayne said, "Let's be careful the way we talk here. We know this place is probably bugged," and he discouraged that kind of talk. So part of the things that they're blaming Wayne on were provoked by their very agent. That was
He made the leading statements far more inflammatory than you would ever hear come out of the mouths of these individuals. And again, I've known them since the militia was established. I believe it was '95, whenever they began establishing it. And I've known these individuals before that. We fought some property rights values before that time, because these same individuals have been concerned about the rights of their fellow Arkansas citizens since back in the '80s.
Now we've stepped on the toes of entrapment. We've totally obliterated these people's Fourth Amendment, which is illegal search and seizure.
Right.
We're yanking their chain on their Second Amendment and their First Amendment to be at odds with the government, which is the reason the whole First Amendment was invoked, was because of political speech. It had nothing to do with all this garbage everybody else thinks that the First Amendment's about.
Right.
The First Amendment was written to protect people to be able to have grievances against the government. It didn't mean you could go out and swear in public.
That's right.
Okay, so now we...
Well, it means you can go out and swear, but you got to take the consequences.
That's right. That's right. But that's the basis of the First Amendment was not for all this free speech that people say they can put anything on a T-shirt and say anything about. It was specifically done to protect people when they had a grievance with the government.
Exactly.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it eliminates some of the speech you're talking about, but we can talk about that.
But that was the intent of the founding fathers.
That was the intent of it at first. So
Yeah, you
so
needn't be afraid of the police powers of the government if you speak up.
So we've obstructed their First Amendment, we've obstructed their Second Amendment, their Fourth Amendment, and their Sixth Amendment.
Yeah, and several areas in the First Amendment.
Possibly.
Even this, his right of freedom of assembly has even been.
Oh, that's true.
They're
Because they
demanding
told
there
him
be
he
no
couldn't
freedom
even-
of assembly as well with the militia members.
That's right. He can no longer meet with them.
Exactly.
Well, if he took them up on that offer, which he didn't, he
Right.
said, "I'll sit in jail, thank you,"
Yeah.
because he was afraid to lose his farm. He was
And there was,
afraid to-
when you put electronic surveillance on someone, you lose your freedom of travel as well. I mean, Wayne does not have a constitution anymore as far as the magistrate.
right.
There is no constitution for Wayne at this.
I have to think. I told you to remind me, and you didn't.
Oh, yes,
did you?
the family.
Wayne was. I think people ought to know this. He's been sent all kinds of letters. A lot of them being returned because you have to address it Hollis Wayne Fincher. If you leave the first name off, they'll send it back to you. Other things have been sent back. They read everything he gets. He received. Somebody mailed him a copy of a biography of Thomas Jefferson and the Constitution. It was, and those two books were sent back to the person that sent them, and the reason given was that they were too heavy.
Too heavy.
That's what the sheriff's or the jail personnel said. Whoever does this, and I'm wondering if it was too heavy for them, too heavy reading for them.
I think it was probably too heavy for him to have in his hands because he might be able to use that as a weapon.
That's exactly why they didn't
That's
want
probably
him.
why,
They didn't want him to have those books.
Yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
This is America.
He's not been convicted of anything yet, right?
No.
He's been charged.
Yeah.
So there's an allegation against him, but
And what's
he's not a
interesting,
criminal.
The day he was taken in to be arraigned, I wasn't there, but I talked to people that were. There were 6 individuals there who, 5 of whom had to have an interpreter to be able to understand their charges. They not only were here in this country illegally and had come back into this country illegally, they had performed crimes after having come back into this country illegally. They were released and said, come back on a certain date for your
They were released on their own recognizance?
I doubt if they even took their names.
But that's how this thing. I see him. I see a civil rights case here. I see an endangerment case because of his health situation. He stayed in jail for several days without his breathing apparatus. He has sleep apnea. Several days he was, or several nights he was there without his sleep apparatus. His medications were late getting to him. There have been all kinds. I see a endangerment. I see all kinds of things here. We need some ambulance chaser, not ambulance chaser, let's hope, but let's see some high-powered lawyer. I see going after the federal government in a major way
he's acquitted,
after this
I
thing.
think so too.
After he's acquitted.
Oscar Stilley.
Stilley
Yes.
is.
Did he just take his case pro bono? Do you know?
Yes, he did. Not exactly pro bono, but he's willing to do it for whatever we can raise, which is another thing. We are trying to raise funds because it's an expensive ordeal for the lawyer, too. So we've got a defense fund set up. If I may, could I tell them where to send some money?
You can say anything you want, Don.
I got freedom of speech.
You've got freedom of speech on this show.
If you want to help Wayne, make a check out to the Wayne Fincher Defense Fund. Send it in care of Don Bright. And my address is 2225 North Mockingbird Lane, Fayetteville 72703. And let me modify this a little bit. I'm receiving the funds myself because I'm keeping a data bank, and I'm going to make sure that every penny is accounted for. And I don't want to be accused of anybody taking the money and using it for anything else. So that's why I get it. I don't like the job, but I got the job. So that's why we're sending it to me. And I'd appreciate anything you can do to help Wayne. Wayne is not a rich person. He's got some nice property, but it's been in his generation, in his family for 4 generations, and he doesn't want to sell it. He wants his children to get it. So
His great-grandfather got off of a barge from the Arkansas River, trudged his way up through wilderness, and homesteaded that property back in the late 1800s, my understanding. So,
Well, no wonder he didn't want to put it up.
exactly.
Bond.
No,
with that kind of a history, you know, if you're not going to
exactly.
just put that at the whim of some government agent that made you wake up on a bad mood and say, we're going to take your farm today.
That's right.
exactly.
No
That's
luck.
exactly
I
right.
guess once you've signed that over, too, you are trusting that everything's going to be handled
And that's
properly.
what Wayne said when he talked to me after that. He said, you know, if all I have to do is sneeze wrong, and they're going to take that property. They want the property.
That's right. That's
Well,
right.
Don, when you had your radio station and the talk radio programs, Wayne was a regular caller then, wasn't he?
Yes,
In
yeah,
the
I
mid-'90s?
Yes. And let me throw this in, too. That's an important thing, because my primary constitutional concern is the wearing down or wearing out of our property rights, private property. Our governments here, both locally, county and city, are busy destroying the very thing that holds this country together, economically and from the standpoint of freedom. If you do not have private property, you are property.
That's right.
And so Wayne and I have not argued, but we've together debated people on this. We've worked on, he's been on my show, and we've done meetings all over. And so I'm saying this to point this out. We're not just mad at the Second Amendment people that don't like it. We don't put all our emphasis on property rights, the Fifth Amendment, but we feel that each of these 2 serious rights are being eroded. And if we don't stop there, as Laurie just said, we're going down that slope. If a person can come out and tell you, I'm going to take part of your land here, and I'm not going to pay you for it, and you take that to court, and the judge says, well, now, I don't think that's a taking. I'm going to let him do it. Well, this judge is redefining the word take. How do you fight that?
I guess you appeal. You have enough money to appeal.
Well, you
hopefully.
just get another judge that'll say the same thing.
Well, that's when we roll into a whole separate issue
Sure.
of the overreach of the judge, of the judicial system, period,
Exactly.
which
That's right.
we're having a problem with in this country. It seems to me that you could take the Constitution and lay it out, and there's just arrows all through it.
Yep.
I mean, it's just being absolutely
It's being
maligned and decimated.
Tell your story about the guy that went through law school and the Constitution.
Let me just finish this
Okay,
real
I'm
quick.
sorry.
What should happen here? And it shouldn't matter which side of the aisle that you're on. It shouldn't matter if you're a liberal. It shouldn't matter if you're conservative. It shouldn't matter if you're an independent. You should be so incensed that your constitutional rights are even being bent at all, even thought about being touched, because it's an American system. That is the very foundation that allows us to even have an open course discussion, to have a liberal side and a conservative side of anything.
Very well.
So when that document, when that is taken from us little by little, like boiling frogs in water, we are going to be at the end of that, and we are just going to be frog legs ready to be served up by the government. And it should not matter if you are an atheist or a devout Christian or if you are a Muslim. It should not matter which side of anything that you're on. If you are an American and you live in this country and you wish to still have the freedoms that we have right now, you should be incensed about all of this. No matter what side of the issue you're on, you should be incensed about the Constitution itself.
And Lori's right. That's what makes Wayne's case more significant than I think people realize. People think, oh, it's this kook out here with machine guns.
That's right.
Well, there's a lot more to it.
There are a lot of people right now on the liberal side or to the left side that are complaining about the Patriot Act, complaining about the fact that George Bush is overreaching by being able to tap their phones.
Yeah.
He's done away with habeas corpus, all of which I agree on.
Yeah.
So they're saying he has broken it's against the Constitution. He doesn't have the power to do that. Yet when a judge sits on his throne and says, I'm not going to allow you to have certain kind of guns, he doesn't have the power to do that.
That's
so
right.
Exactly what you're talking about. This is an issue. Wayne's case means a lot of things for a lot of people of every stripe, and it's standing up for America.
That's exactly right.
And there is a remedy for this. There is a remedy.
Yeah, be Americans and drop these lines.
But there's a direct remedy for it. The balance of power is supposed to be primarily with the people's representatives.
Right.
And the thing they control, and I've been making this statement on the radio show on a regular basis, the thing that the representatives, our representatives control, they control the purse strings. Now, I guarantee you, if judges that make unconstitutional rulings, judges that throw legislation up in the face of the Constitution, you cut off every penny to that court, you cut off every penny to their staff. My statement is hungry judges become cooperative judges.
Well, that's true.
Or at least follow the Constitution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same thing happened here in the state of Arkansas with this case, the Lakewood case. Our judges, the judges in Arkansas, on the Supreme Court, they're ordering around the legislative body. That's against the Constitution. In the Kellogg case that came before the U.S. Supreme Court, the judges are ordering around the local government. That is totally against their rights, totally against their office. They are not to be making changes to the Constitution. They're not to be making laws. They're not to be ordering anybody. Their job is to apply the Constitution to a particular limited issue.
That's right.
And not make these overreaching claims.
That's
What
right.
Don was talking about a while ago, you may be familiar with John Stormer. Wrote None Dare Call It Conspiracy years ago. He interviewed some 100 law students. Students that had graduated from law school were going to get pass their bar. And interviewing these law students from various colleges all over the country. Out of 100 students, how many do you think ever studied the Constitution?
2.
None.
Lori's right.
One, two.
Two out of 100, I think I told her the story.
Oh.
2 out of 100 studied
I didn't know.
She cheated. She's got a quick notes there.
Written on
I
that.
got it.
2 had studied the Constitution. The rest of them studied judges' opinions about the Constitution. Now, we can talk opinions all day.
That's right.
If we go in the kitchen and start cooking, we can talk about opinions on a particular dish. But until we study the recipe for the dish, we'll never get it made.
That's right.
And that's where we are today. We're studying opinions. We're not studying the Constitution.
And at one of the quorum court meetings, I raised the point that one activity they were doing is unconstitutional, and that's taking a person's land without paying them for it. And I think it was the county judge, but I'm not sure. He said, well, the courts have allowed that. Well, I then couldn't resist myself, and I asked the question, can a judge amend the Constitution? Well, they've allowed it. Now, this wasn't the county judge. I think it might have been the county attorney. And
I think it was.
And I like George. We kind of went back and forth on it. And I said, George, I'm going to ask you one more time, can one judge amend the Constitution? He went, no. He didn't like it. But that's what we're seeing here.
Yes.
Judges by themselves or in small groups are amending our Constitution and
That's
making it worthless.
And we have this huge elephant in the room that everybody's just going along with.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because it just is.
It just irks me no end to hear a judge say, I will not allow this in my courtroom. It isn't their courtroom.
It's our
It's the
courtroom.
people's courtroom.
That's right.
Right.
It's
And
the
again,
people's courtroom.
we have to rein this in, and we've got to do it through our representatives. Our representatives won't do it, then we have to get new
You have to
representatives.
go to the money, don't you?
That's exactly right.
And
That
everything
will
we
stop
do
it.
today.
That will stop it.
You have to have enough people, though, Johnny and Don. You have to have enough people to do that. And the complacency and the mediocrity right now, even just in this community alone.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? I don't think it's conscious mediocrity, and I don't think it's conscious. I think that people are so busy and so tired, and we're all wrapped up in our own things that we're not thinking.
Well, Lori, the reason I get on the radio
long-term-
every morning, 7:30 each morning, I get on the radio to try and turn the very tide you're talking about there. I tell people, turn off American Idol and pick up your Constitution.
That's right. That's right. Because education is going to is paramount.
That's the
here.
key.
Because there's not enough people to realize they're not looking. They're thinking about their mortgage payment that's due on the first. They're not thinking about what our kids. You and I talked about this morning. What in the kind of world are we going to turn over to my children? I got a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, and you've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I mean, and you have an 11-year-old and fixing to be a newborn grandchild. I mean, what kind of world are we turning over to our kids? Are there enough people still left that can think 10 years from now?
Lori, I can remember when I was in the 2nd grade, we began to learn how to spell and read and write in the 1st grade. And by the 2nd grade, we were reading books. One of the first articles to read that I was handed by the school was a copy of the Constitution.
That's right.
And it was so reverently given to us, almost like a prayer book, This is America.
Yeah.
Don't ever let that thing be torn up.
That stayed with you, obviously, all your life.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that was in the public schools. Can you imagine that being done today?
Oh, I doubt if you can find a
I
copy.
bet you can't find a copy of the Constitution in public school.
I'll bet you. I'll be
Probably
willing
been
to bet you
outlawed
a
along with the
dinner.
Bible.
Yeah.
Wait, let me take us back to Wayne for a second.
Wayne who?
Hollis Wayne.
Hollis Wayne. Yeah.
Get that right.
Don, you're behind, I guess, an effort to put some signs out and bumper
Yes,
stickers.
yes.
And Johnny, are you involved in that too?
Yeah.
What's the plan there? How many people are involved in?
Oh, we've got people. I couldn't guess.
No
Probably
idea.
100 that are running around helping us in one way or another. We have gotten contributions to show you how this has become a national case. I have gotten contributions from Vermont, New Jersey, California, Idaho, Texas, Mississippi.
Pettigrew?
Yeah, and Little Rock. Something.
Little
I don't know where that state is.
Hogeye?
Yeah, I got one for the Hogeye Mayor. But no, it is. It's become a national case. That is all over the internet.
Right.
And what was that I got today that the Justice Department or some of the marshals or somebody have been going around hitting on any website that has the Wayne Fincher on it.
Really?
Yes. This guy, he knows how to keep track of those things, and he knows he got 2 hits just today from that sort of thing. So they're worried about this case.
Well, I was wondering if any national organizations, there are at least, there's one, and I can't remember the name of it, it's a major organization with 650,000 members. It involves Second Amendment.
Oh, the National Rifle Association?
No, it's not the NRA.
Well, it's
there's
Gun
another one.
Owners of America.
No.
That's the next biggest one.
No, I can't. I wish I could remember the name of it. It's kind of a.
It was a Second Amendment was in their title.
Yeah, and I had
the Second
sent them an
Amendment
email
Foundation,
just
I think it
asking
was.
if they'd heard of this case, if they're familiar with it, and haven't got a response yet. But I'm wondering who knows out there about what's happening.
Well, we've been, several of us have been on semi-national or national radio hookups through privately owned networks and this sort of thing. I get emails every day from people that are just now finding out about it and wanting to know what they can do. Got a call from a guy from Kentucky today. I just found out about Wayne's case. What do you want us to do? We'll drive up there and help if you want us to.
Loretta Weston from down in Russellville, who has the Arkansas Family Journal.
American Family.
American
Journal.
Family.
Well, anyway.
She publishes a newsletter every month. She's published her letter goes all over the world. She has written several articles. In fact, her headline article last month was on Wayne. She'll be here for the trial as well.
And the trial's in Fort Smith, isn't it?
No, it's right here in.
No, it's going to be here in Fayetteville,
in
at
Fayetteville.
the federal building.
Oh, federal
not
building.
the county courthouse.
Okay.
Is that the John Paul Hammersmith Federal Building?
I guess it's the tall building over off the square.
Off the square.
Has the NRA or any of those national organizations?
We've gotten a lot of instrumental help by the Gun Owners of America, which is growing. It's actually growing by leaps and bounds. FIJA, which is the Fully Informed Jury Association, has sent us all kinds of kits on how to do this sort of thing, some pamphlets to hand out, and that is a group. If you want to find out about jury notification, your rights as a jurist, which is more powerful than the judge, go to FIGA or just put in Fully Informed Jury Association in your Google, and it'll find it for you. But yes, we're getting there. We don't have as much as we'd like, but we're getting quite a bit of national attention because people are looking at this not as a case of Wayne Fincher having a wrong gun. Do we have a constitution or do we not? That's right. That's the question we're asking.
Could this be the case that challenges that 1934 law?
It could well be.
Could well be.
It could well be because the situation that Wayne has put together with this, the Silver Bullet, with being in the militia and with having mailed information to all of the authorities and having followed the letter of the law as far as the constitutions go, has put it to where it is a winnable case. That's really it's a winnable case.
His homework.
Exactly. The other cases that have come up, I've read, like I say, I've done a lot of reading about the cases that have come up around the country, probably 100, 150 cases. And the ones that have come up have been, in some cases, what you made typical a while ago, the wild-eyed person with an automatic weapon. Yeah. Those kind of cases they've gone down quickly. Wayne's case is different. He has crossed all of his T's and dotted all of his I's. I've got a call in, or I've been communicating with Joseph Farah of WorldNet Daily, actually the largest independent news gathering group in the world, and they look like they may well be picking this case up as well to do reports on it. So there are a lot of interest in this around the country.
We do have signs available. If anybody wants to get them, they can call me. I'll give you my number. It's 251-9639. If you want to come by and pick up just a half a dozen yard signs, well, please do, and put them anywhere you want to. There are some people, don't put them on private property. Yeah. Well, I think we have the right to put them anywhere else, but just be judicious in your decisions. Yeah, but I'll be glad to get all the cards to you that I can.
And every morning on our radio show, Inside AM, we do an update on that's on the KOFC, 1250 AM at 7:30 to 9:30 each morning. We do a morning update on what we know about anything new that's happened. I also have signs and bumper stickers down at the radio station, which is in Springdale on South Thompson. Also, you can log on to my website. It's insideam.com. And every letter that Wayne writes, if you want to read what Wayne's had to say, I've got 2 or 3 of his letters posted. I've got opinions that have been written by various writers, including our good friend Don Bright right here. And we've had a lot of folks read these. In fact, one of the postings, Don's and another gentleman who is running the Militia website, they were running neck and neck for a while. There's been hundreds of people have read these letters, and literally from all over the country. So we're getting a lot of information out, trying to educate the folks that this is not just a situation of a man wanting a gun. This is violation of your Constitution.
That's right.
First, I just have an editorial website, and it's brightremarks.com. And that's all you got to do. Just put brightremarks.com and read the front page. It's continued in the back, and it'll tell you everything that happened.
BRIGHT?
BRIGHT remarks.
Okay.
That was the night at the court meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, the morning of the radio show and that night, and my confrontation with the judge.
And this is a very important topic. I'm glad the 4 of us could sit and talk about it. And hopefully the people at home can see how critical this is and how significant this is to their lives, not just Wayne Fincher, but to the future of our country.
That's right.
And so with that said, I'm Mike Masterson.
And I'm Laurie Masterson.
And thank you for joining us tonight on Need to Know.
Bye.